Greetings and welcome to the Truth Algorithm. Now, this is part one of this video series. And today we're going to be talking about the introduction and the basic concepts relating to the truth algorithm. Purposes of this is to uncover the truth in a hostile world. And I'm your host, Captain Kevin Smith. I also have a radio show that appears on Red State Talk Radio. It's a weekend show. And we talk about the truth algorithm on this radio show and podcast. The show airs on Red State Talk Radio on the weekends. And also, we have a new book coming out. I wanted to plug that one as well. This book is called The Sonic Warrior Chronicles of a Top Gun Pioneer. In the book, we also talk about things related to what we will be discussing today, which is dealing with complexity and uncertainty. Now, we're going to be diving into this whole idea of the truth algorithm. What is it? Why do we need it? And how do we get it? The truth algorithm is a analytic process, if you will. We could also consider it to be a thing, a standalone item, one of the tools in our tool set as we use that in our efforts to think critically and to solve complex problems. The truth algorithm is going to help us in a rather substantial and important way to determine if an assertion or proposition that claims to be true is in fact true, or it is not true, which is also termed a lie. Now, why do we want to do this? This is one way that we can pursue the wisdom, to acquire wisdom in our lives, to work toward acquiring wisdom. And the way we're going to do that, we're going to do certain things that are not normal in the normal sense of the word, and also not conventional. We are going to be outside the box. We are going to employ critical thinking in a substantial way. And we're also going to be open to new ideas as we examine this whole area that we will be discussing. One of the most important things that we're going to be emphasizing today is to view reality in a certain way. Typically, we can say that a fair number of people view reality as a formless collection of data surrounding random events, and as Dietrich Dorner has pointed out in his book, The Logic of Failure, this will almost always lead to failure. And so we're not going to be doing that. We're going to be looking at reality differently. Now, okay, so let me start off this discussion here by clarifying certain things and to establish a foundation by which we can examine this whole area of truth, things that are not true, this whole issue related to propaganda and official lying. Okay, the truth algorithm, what is it? All right, the truth, we're going to say the truth algorithm addresses itself to what is in fact true or the truth. The truth is an objective, identifiable construct that functions as a meaningful aspect of that which is real. The truth resides within a quantum field of reality in which corresponding and related elements of that which is true interact with one another to produce a neural network in which knowledge and wisdom emerges. Critical thinking helps us clarify that which is actual or true, without which we are left adrift in a sea of the unknown. Importantly, when countering situations in which can best be described as hostile to reason as a result of an ongoing information warfare campaign, a more robust weapon of choice is, in fact, necessary. Such a weapon is the truth algorithm. The truth algorithm. Now, here's a good definition of what it is. The truth algorithm is a decision aid whose purpose is to enable one to determine with a high degree of confidence if an assertion or proposition that claims to be true is either true or not true. The truth algorithm is most useful when one finds oneself in a hostile environment, that is, in an environment that is hostile to reason. The truth algorithm employs an analytic process along with critical thinking and higher order reasoning to arrive at a conclusion concerning the claim regarding the assertion or proposition, the claim that it is true. The truth algorithm, what is it? It enables one to actively engage and defeat the propaganda machine by employing algorithmic reasoning robust enough to function under conditions of deception. The truth algorithm defeats those engaged in information warfare against us by employing quantification metrics in which a reliable distinction can be made between that which is true and that which is not true. Okay, the problem space. This is the problem that we are all facing. The mind of society is now the new battlefield in the current global struggle for geopolitical domination. And this comes from Richard Thiem. Information warfare is underway and is being used to gain control of the mind of society. The mind space is the battleground where warfare is being waged. In order for action to take place against such hostilities, battle space awareness is essential. Now, hostile agents have entered the battle space employing cognitive mechanisms designed to enhance the plausibility of a proposition that is unsupported by that which is actually true, and thus it is objectively a lie, yet is masquerading as the truth. Recognizing this cognitive trickery is important. Yet, the ultimate solution is a massive effort that empowers one to reliably distinguish truth from lies by employing critical thinking and the truth algorithm. The truth algorithm is, in fact, a robust decision aid that helps us in this process. Keep in mind that we are engaged in information warfare, and the minds of society is the new battle space. Our weapon of choice. Now, we can choose to be passive or be active. I choose to be active, and if I'm going to be active, I want to be effective and not spin my wheels. And the way I'm going to do that is I'm going to employ the truth algorithm whenever I encounter these massive efforts at deception. And the problem statement, again, that we are addressing here in this series of videos, as well as what we are addressing in the real world. We live in a world in which truth is a rare commodity. Things that are not true are being presented as being true, producing defects in human consciousness. When government officials, leaders, and experts are engaged in systematic lying, that we can either cower in place or we can fight back with the truth algorithm. That is our choice. Definition here of what is true. What is the truth? The truth is a natural, legitimate, and enduring construct which resides within a model of reality, reflecting that which is real, actual, and objectively exists. The truth needs no artificial support and exists entirely on its own. The truth is that which endures. And now we are faced with the truth versus the lie, and our efforts to make a clear distinction between the two. What is a lie? Often called the big lie. A lie is an artificial construct intended to deceive. A lie cannot endure on its own because it does not actually exist. In order for a lie to persist, it must be believed to be true by many. Otherwise, it will evaporate into nothingness. The big lie, which has often been used, make the lie big, make it simple, and keep saying it, and eventually they will believe it. So keep in mind, that's what we are confronting in this information warfare battle that we face. This is important, and keep this in mind. The model of reality. What is the model of reality? There are boundary conditions around what that which is real. And we have to be very methodic and very exact in our construction of the model of reality. The model of reality contains that which is true, that which is actual, that which is real. That which is not true does not fit within the model of reality. Now, you notice in the graphic there is some overlap, and that's intentional because there are such things as half-truths. All right, but basically, Our model of reality contains only that which is true, verifiably true, justifiably true. Otherwise, it doesn't fit within our model of reality. Now, we may consider it because of certain things related to uncertainty for sure, but we have to have some kind of model of reality going for us if we're going to make any progress in the world. Okay, so that brings us to the truth algorithm. Now, in this section here, we're going to be talking about the truth algorithm. Some of the stuff is going to be a little bit technical in nature, but we'll try to make it as easy and as simple as possible. We will be repeating ourselves from time to time to emphasize important points. So just keep that in mind. We're going to try to deal with this in a way that is understandable, also hopefully enjoyable for us to delve into this area and consider it carefully and analytically and use our best critical thinking attributes as we go forward in this explanation, in this effort here to define what the truth algorithm actually is and how we can use it to improve our lives. The first and foremost thing about the truth algorithm does not exist in a vacuum. The truth algorithm fits within the constructs of the reality that we are facing, the environment that we exist in. So the reality is or contains things like what is the environment, what is some circumstances, what is the situation, and how much adversity are we facing. So it is important for us to begin there. We are not talking about normal conditions. We're talking about conditions that are not normal. We're talking about environments that are difficult, perhaps even hostile environments. And in particular, here for our discussions anyway, we're talking about an environment that is hostile to reason. Also, the environments that we are dealing with here are uncertain and complex. This whole area of uncertainty and complexity can be dealt with either in an ad hoc basis or we can employ the analytics of uncertainty. We choose to employ the analytics of uncertainty, and we're going to be discussing what they are, at least some of them. Some of these analytics are quite powerful, and we're going to look at ways in which we can quantify things that are uncertain to bring some level of understanding to the world so that we can deal with it effectively. When we quantify, we're going to be talking about the quantum aspects of reality. Quantum means to quantify. We're going to look at ways that we can quantify beliefs, likelihoods, expectations, probabilities, and perhaps most importantly, risk. All of these things are real. These things are difficult to deal with right now as humans, largely because we have not been given the tools by which we can deal with and be comfortable understanding and considering and factoring in the conditions of complexity and uncertainty by which we can then make informed decisions and achieve mission success. We are going to be dealing with that. Our world right now you can say, what world are we occupying here in this video or this series of videos? What is the world? We are occupying a quantum world. That's where we are residing. All right. It is not deterministic. It is looking at things like probabilities or conditional probabilities, expectations, risk, and so forth. In search of the truth, in our ability to believe in that which is true, what is my belief expressed as a likelihood in terms of a conditional probability that an assertion or proposition that claims to be true is objectively true. That's where we're going to begin our discussion. Once we have clarified the environment that we are in, we are now going to be looking at what is my initial belief, or what do I consider to be the likelihood of something or some such thing. The truth. Now, this is a little bit perhaps unusual, and this is, of course, way outside the box, but that's the whole point of this series of videos. Anyway, we are going to be moving outside the box, and we're going to be finding that it's okay to be there, and it's actually comfortable and quite enjoyable. One of the things that is going to move us outside the box is by declaring that truth exists within a quantum field of reality. The truth is not singular, but exists in ways that interact with that which is also true. Now keep in mind, the truth is not singular, but it is interactive with other things that are also true. What is my belief? Expressed as a likelihood in terms of a conditional probability that an object, occurrence, expression, or thing is real and is known to be true. The truth is out there. What is, in fact, the truth continuum? The truth continuum consists of things that are actually true, also things that are highly likely to be true, also things that it is possible for such a thing to be true, also it is unlikely that this is true. And finally, it is impossible for this to be true for very specific reasons. That's the truth continuum. And that's what we're going to be using as we examine things with respect to the truth algorithm going forward. The truth continuum is a major component of the truth algorithm. So keep that in mind. The truth claim. In search of the truth, often we encounter this. Event A has been reported to have occurred and a truth assertion has been made. Furthermore, updated evidence B has been independently acquired. Our job here is to determine the likelihood expressed as a conditional probability that event A is true, given that evidence B has also been acquired. This deals with our thing we call situation awareness. This comes from the field of aviation, which is the field that I come from. Situation awareness deals with perception, comprehension, and projection, and we have to be clearly aware of what is going on so as to make this initial determination. And finally, I wanted to point out here that as we consider these things that are uncertain. As we delve into this area of uncertainty, keep in mind that we have been here for a very, very long period of time. Um, Often we deal with uncertainty in terms of risk. We kind of throw this term around a lot. Often we throw it around like candy, not really understanding truly what we are talking about. So what I'm trying to do here is to make sure that we are all very proficient and we are very exacting in our understanding of what risk is. Exactly what is it? Risk is the probability that mission success will be degraded. So, mission success in terms of whatever is going on, whatever operation we are involved with. Risk is an indication that something is degrading our performance, something is affecting our lives in a negative way, and therefore it is imposing risk, or there is a certain risk dimension that we need to address ourselves to. Okay, so risk has been around a long time. Our ability to manage risk is not very well developed. I'm going to say that right out front. Our ability to manage risk is is not very well developed for various reasons. Some of them are education, some of them are training, some of them are experience, some of them are cultural, whatever. But our risk management abilities are quite limited. We're going to fix that in the course of this and other related videos. Now, algorithmic reasoning. That is the way we are going to address ourselves in a very um, meaningful way to deal with this whole area of uncertainty, which often is called risk. Risk to our lives, risk to our operation, risk to our mission. Initially, what is the belief, likelihood, or conditional probability that something is true or actually exists? This is the way we begin the algorithmic reasoning process. Evidence and events. Okay. We are going to be looking at things that we call occurrences or a non trivial occurrence. So something has happened, something has occurred. It could be that we have acquired information, it could be we acquired new information, it could be that something has happened in our lives around us, or something has occurred with respect to this nation that we live in or the world that we are occupying. It could be something, all right? So, whatever it is, we're going to call it an event, all right? And often we can label these events as event A. There could be other events as well, which we would call event B. Sometimes the claim is the event, and then we gather independent information that could be also an event as well. Conditional probability. That's how we're going to deal with things that are uncertain or risky. We're going to be focusing in on conditional probability. In this case, with respect to the truth algorithm, we are going to be focusing in on two major things. Event A is the initial starting condition. Often it is called the a priori knowledge. And event B is updated information. We're going to be looking at event A and B, and also the impact of event B, given that we know that event A has occurred as well. So we're actually going to be looking at three things. Three things go into our truth algorithm, and we're going to get an output from the algorithm to help us understand reality better when we are operating under conditions of complexity and uncertainty. Okay, and I'm going to be repeating myself here, so just spoiler alert. This is going to be, just a bit tedious, but it does have to be repeated because it's very important that we clearly understand what we're talking about and we don't get confused. We have the initial evidence coming in somehow, and then we have updated evidence at a later date. Now we are on some kind of time horizon. The time is moving forward, or we are moving through time and space, or whatever you want to say. That the environment that we're living in is not static, but it is dynamic. Therefore, we gather or we have acquired initial evidence, and then we update that evidence, and then we ultimately want to determine whether or not such and such is in fact true. Okay, again, our belief that this is in fact true or not true is based upon what we call the truth continuum. We talked about this previously. The truth continuum contains things like it actually is true, or it's likely to be true, it's possible, unlikely, or it is impossible for that to be true. That's the truth continuum, which is a major part of the truth algorithm. Again, evidence A and B. They're looked at independently and then they're looked at together, where we examine things that have come together. Given that event B has occurred along with event A, what is that reality? And here we can say that the initial event updated with new evidence. And we can look at it in terms of what portion of reality does that exist in. Eventually, we want to know what is the complete picture concerning the conditional probability that this is real or exists. Conditional probability, that in itself is a rather big subject. We are going to be looking at the probability of things and their impact as well. And you can design your own chart like this one if you wish to get a better handle on what we are trying to address here with respect to the conditional probability that such and such is in fact real or true. Again, the knowledge of the situation is our knowledge of event A, our knowledge of event B, and our knowledge of event B, given that event A has also occurred. Okay, I'm going to go through the truth algorithm um, rather quickly here. It does get a bit tedious. I just want to alert you to that fact. It does get a bit tedious. I'm going to go through it to let you know that there is in fact a algorithmic process that we're dealing with here, and so we'll just quickly go through that to show you that we have an algorithmic process in place. We begin with a proposition or assertion, and we go down to the truth claim, which is the first diamond, and then we continue. If the claim is made, we continue to the clarification of the initial evidence, which we call A, evidence A, and then that is updated with evidence B, and we consider if evidence B impacts evidence A. If there is a impact or an interaction, then we determine the likelihood of evidence A is true given that evidence B has occurred. So this is an important thing to seriously consider. We don't look at things individually. We don't look at things in isolation. We look at things with respect to other related things, and that's the power of this algorithm. It is not a singular examination of things. That often leads to mission failure. We look at things that have a relationship to one another, and that gives us a better idea of reality when we consider things like that. Here we have a flow chart. We can look at the initial evidence as well as assigning a conditional probability to evidence A, going on and acquiring evidence B at a bit later in time, and then we assign a conditional probability to evidence B, and then we finally, not finally, but we ultimately consider B and A together, and then finally we are looking for what is the impact of A, B, and B given A on the total picture. And our final conclusion relates to in a mathematical consideration or a theorem. We're going to have a theorem here to help us, a mathematical theorem to help us understand how we should consider three things together, A, B, and B given A. Here we have that graphically expressed in the truth algorithm. We have A as a standalone item, event A. We have event B as a standalone item. And then finally we have event B given that we are aware of, or we have event A, knowledge of event A having occurred as well. And then ultimately we're looking for our final answer, which is what is the likelihood of A given that we understand or have knowledge of event B having occurred as well. Here we have the conditional probability shown graphically, and we'll be using this in the truth algorithm. The quantum aspects of this are represented here. We are going to quantify. If something is actual, real, and it is certain, we're going to give it a value of 1.0. If something is likely or highly likely, we're going to give it a value of 0.75. If something is possible, we're going to give it a value of 0.50. If something is unlikely, we're going to give it a value of 0.25. And finally, If something is impossible, we're going to give it a value of less than 0.25. Okay, one more run through with respect to the truth algorithm before we get into the uh, the engine of it, or the Bayes theorem. One more run through. Initial info is acquired, which we call info A. Information B is received, which relates to A. Then we look at the likelihood of B is updated given that A has also occurred. And finally, we're looking for the likelihood of A given that B has also occurred. Okay, the truth algorithm, this is our search area. All right, this is our solution space, if you will. Here we have A on the top and B on the side. Okay, and this is our matrix, and this is how we're going to be able to identify both A and B and their combination as well. So here we can use this matrix to help us clarify where we are and where we are going uh, with this employment of the truth algorithm. Okay, it's a little bit complex, but we'll get into this in some measure of detail in the next video. I did want to introduce it here to let you know that we're just not blowing smoke, but we have something meaningful to utilize as part of the truth algorithm. All right, this here we can see that the conditional probability of A given evidence B. So here we have A and B, and we're looking at both of those events, if you will, with respect to their conditional probability of having occurred or actually being true. Now we can do the final search. I'm just going to throw this out. This is also part of the truth algorithm process. I'm just going to show you that eventually we can find a solution here. We can see that this hypothetical exercise gives us a solution. It falls in the cell of possible, and that is given some number associated with it. Okay, the um, the algorithmic engine of the truth algorithm is Bayes' theorem. Now here we're going to spend a fair amount of time discussing Bayes' theorem because that is the heart of the truth algorithm. That is the mathematically valid um, device in which we are going to determine the likelihood that something that is claimed to be true is in fact true. Okay. Now, I'm going to spend a fair amount of time here on this because we have to develop two things. We have to understand what Bayes' theorem is all about. We have to um, adopt a certain mindset because Bayes' theorem is not does not exist in what we would consider to be um, the typical world that most people occupy. It actually occupies a different area, and we have to develop a certain comfort with it and a certain mindset. It looks at reality a bit differently than what most people are comfortable with or have been taught. And it actually is a very robust mathematical expression and mathematical theorem, but it does require a certain level of understanding that is a bit unusual, and I would also say quite a bit outside the box. Nevertheless, it is a proven uh, theorem. It is proven to work extremely well, particularly when we are trying to quantify uncertainty. It is actually the theorem of choice when we are trying to quantify uncertainty. This is where we should all go. We should all go to Bayes' theorem to help us. Bayes' theorem helps us in a dynamic environment. It provides us with initial and updated information with respect to event A has in fact occurred. Event B has also occurred after A has occurred, and it uses event B to update the understanding of the likelihood or the hypothesis of event A. So it's a combination of things, and it really does help us deal with the rather complex issues that we are faced when confronted with conditions of uncertainty. Okay, what is Bayes' theorem about? We can see that the expression on the left side, the probability of A given that B is known, is our overall is the solution to this equation. This is what we're looking for. We're looking for some measure of understanding of the probability that A is true or exists, given that B has also occurred. And that is related to, or the way we can calculate that algorithmically, we can calculate that by looking at the probability of B having occurred, given that A has also occurred, times the probability that A has occurred, divided by the probability that B is known to exist. Again, and we're gonna cover this in a number of different ways, so that we can be clear about it and we can understand it in a way that will help us deal with it effectively. The answer we're looking for is the probability that A is true or has occurred, given the knowledge that we have acquired that event B has in fact occurred. All right, that's the posterior. That's what we're looking for. That is the probability that A being true given that B is true. What is that probability? That's the answer on the left. On the right-hand side of the equation, we're looking at the likelihood, the probability of B being true given that A is true. The prior, which is the probability of A being true, this is the prior knowledge. And on the bottom, it says the probability that B is true as a standalone piece of knowledge. Here we can see that the probability of A is true given that B has occurred is on the left side, and that is on the right side. That is equal to the probability that B is true given that A has also occurred and the likelihood that A is true as a initial condition, and that is all divided by the likelihood that B has occurred. All right, that's exactly the same thing. And over on the left side of the screen, we can see that we are going to quantify certain things with respect to the probability that they have occurred. Here is another series of terms. It's very much like the others. You can stop it and take a look at this at your leisure. I'm just going to throw this out. This is something that you may want to consider going forward. This is just rewording some of the things that I have said before. Now, one of the things that that sometimes seems to be a bit confusing is that you notice here that we have A, and you notice here that we have H. Okay. Sometimes the Bayes theorem is used um, utilizing or is employed utilizing terms like what is your initial hypothesis? All right. That's the same thing as a belief. That's the same thing as what is my what do I think is the probability that something is this or that or something has occurred or some level of risk is going on. Uh, Sometimes it is called a hypothesis. It basically means the same thing. If you like the word hypothesis, you can use it. If you like the word probability of an event, you can also use that as well. It doesn't really matter what terms you use. The theorem works either way. Okay, now here's another good um, explanation. And here they're using hypothesis in this equation. The probability a hypothesis is true given the evidence. All right, so this is another good way to understand Bayes' theorem. This explanation tends to be a little bit different, but I think in some cases it's a little bit easier for us to understand some of the nuances of this theorem. We'll start with the left-hand side. This is what we're looking for. This is the answer. The answer we're looking for is the probability a hypothesis is true given the evidence, P, probability H given E. That equals to the probability a hypothesis is true before any evidence is present, that is pH, all right, times the probability of seeing the evidence if the hypothesis is true, that's PE given H, divided by the probability of the observed evidence, which is PE. Okay, now don't get tangled up with some of these terms here. All right, they're all basically meaning the same thing. So when we say the probability of seeing the evidence if the hypothesis is true, another way of saying that is the probability of E given that H is true. Okay. So we're looking at things from a singular basis, and we're also looking at things that that we could call uh, from a combined basis to give us a better understanding of how this all fits together to help us understand um, what is the likelihood or the probability that something is true or has occurred under conditions of uncertainty. Here's another graphic here. uh, about the same thing, but just keep this in mind that all these things are basically the same. Just a little bit different way to explain it. I'm presenting this stuff because I want all of us to have a pretty good working knowledge of what all of these mathematical expressions actually mean. Again, on the left-hand side of the equation, we're looking at the posterior probability of H, the hypothesis, given the evidence E is equal to the prior probability, P sub H, times the likelihood of the evidence E if the hypothesis H is true, divided by the prior probability that the evidence itself is true. Okay, that's another way of saying that. This is a pretty good way of saying it. Uh, and here on the left-hand side of the screen, you can see some of the examples that we might utilize when we are plugging in numbers into the mathematical theorem. Here we can plug in, let's say H is 50-50 chance of it being true, 0.50. Here we have the evidence of B is 0.75. Here we have the evidence of the evidence E given the knowledge of H is 0.60 and so forth and so on. So you get an idea of what we can how we can plug in numbers into this equation to come out with an example. Now, keep in mind that this equation will give us outputs that are nonlinear. All right, so this is a nonlinear equation or mathematical theorem. Just keep that in mind. Again, the Bayes' theorem, event A is most likely to have occurred given the occurrence of event B. All right, this is and all of these things are basically the Bayes' theorem. Here you have evidence A and B. All right, and then you take a look at evidence B, which is the recent polling, given evidence A has in fact occurred. Okay, and you look at that, and your conclusion, which is related, which is shown in evidence A given evidence B, after you have performed your calculations, the Bayes algorithm comes up with 90% probability that Trump wins the election. Now, you can do this in utilizing any number of inputs into the equation and come up with a series of conditional probabilities as an output. This is just one example of how you can use this algorithm. In this case, it is showing something rather amazing, that the conditional probability output of this algorithm is showing something that was not initially understood, but may have been useful at the time. Okay. In conclusion, the Bayes theorem and the truth algorithm is trying to encourage us to think critically and to employ big picture thinking. We need to be able to look at the occurrence, the situation, and the environment going into this thinking process. And that is going to help us come up with the initial um, input, the initial hypothesis, the initial conditional probability by which we can then begin to activate this truth algorithm. We have to clarify the environment. I can't stress this enough. The truth algorithm requires us first and foremost to clarify the environment that we are living in, to clarify the environment that we exist in, our world. What is going on in our world? Here you can see the various terms for the environment. You can come up with your own. Typically, we can say that the environment is either normal or adverse. Sometimes we could say that the environment is hostile as well. Algorithmic reasoning. Okay. Not very well understood. We kind of think that algorithms ought to be used by computers. Well, that's not necessarily true. Algorithms can be used by humans. We should be building our algorithms and using them. Now, we can use computers to help, but we should be doing this thinking on a regular basis. It is a formal process to examine key aspects of a situation, event, or occurrence so as to determine such mission critical considerations as risk, probabilities, utility, or likelihood pertaining to mission success. Finally, what we are trying to determine here with the truth algorithm is what is the truth? What is the likelihood that something is in fact true or something is in fact not true? What is the likelihood that this or that is true or not true? The truth versus a lie is ultimately what we are looking for. Keep in mind that the truth endures. The truth can stand on its own. A lie cannot exist on its own and will soon evaporate and vanish if nobody continues to believe it.